Hey, this is JP coming to you on behalf of ForPeoplesChoice.com and AliasJewel.xyz. And normally would take the time to set the camera up to where everything's not in reverse like you see there. But I'm just going to finish reading this portion that I've been doing on some of the history of our nation and their interaction with drug dealing. You see that President Trump is trying to get to where you can get life for selling drugs. Well, I definitely hope that if they're going to do that, they're going to make sure that they deal with all the politicians and all of the individuals that are responsible for a lot of the drug issues that are going on right now. Um, where we left off, we were talking about Manuel Noriega, being utilized and being an ally for the U.S. for a very long time, but finally the United States did go after him and had him sentenced to 40 years in prison, and many say that was because they feel that Noriega knew too much and he was wanting too big of a cut for his knowledge and his participation in this ring. And then we go on to Bill Clinton, and it says that he may not be exempt either. A small airport in Mena, Arkansas, happened to have been a center for an international drug smuggling ring. Barry Seal, who had ties to both the CIA and was an undercover informant for the DEA, kept his plane in Mena. He smuggled somewhere between $3 to $5 billion in drugs into the country. Um, so we have to understand that this wasn't a small operation. If you've seen the movie American Made, that's who it's about, is Barry Seal. Um, so we also have to realize that um, he was a part of he was also Seal was also a part of the Reagan administration's efforts to implicate the Sandinistas in drug trafficking. When it wasn't the Sandinistas, it was the Contras who Reagan was working with and supporting. Even though he was actually smuggling the weapons for the Contras, as I said, or to the Contras. He was murdered by the Colombian Medellin cartel in Baton Rouge in February 1986. And among the articles in Seal's car was George Bush's private phone number. Clinton claimed that he had learned about Mena well after the fact, sometime in 1988, in April 1988, even though the state police had been investigating the operations there for several years. And I know that movies embellish some of the times, and I know that they sometimes make up different things. But in part of the movie, Bill Clinton was the reason that Barry Seal was allowed to leave the jails after the CIA, the DEA, and all these individuals had converged on him and locked him up, or had at least had him at the police station. Then the DA had to let him go, and they wouldn't say Bill Clinton, but she said, "But Bill, do you understand what's going on?" So they were trying to throw some slugs in there along the way. Um, Among the articles we talked about George Bush's cell phone number. In September 1991, Clinton spoke publicly about all kinds of questions about whether Seal had any links to the CIA and if that backed into the Iran-Contra deal. Seal's contraband in Mena generated hundreds of millions of dollars that had to be laundered, and his papers show that he dealt with at least one big bank in Little Rock, Arkansas. Inquiries into Mena were stifled or held up or hidden, and the IRS agent Bill Duncan told Congress in 1992 during Clinton's presidential campaign that his superiors directed him to withhold information from Congress to perjure himself. So it's better to lie and get caught up than to sit there and tell the truth and implicate some of these individuals that are running for high positions. And that's one of the reasons I started doing a lot of these videos, because probably none of this would have even come out if Barry Seal had not started documenting everything. When he saw that the CIA and the DEA started rolling over on him, acting like they didn't know him or anything else, he started documenting all of this stuff so that he would have a trail of everything that was going on in his life, because he saw that if he didn't, they would make him out to be something that he wasn't the only part of. In 1996, the San Jose Mercury News comes out with a 20,000 word series by a reporter named Gary Webb that he'd been researching for more than a year. The article described a pipeline between the Colombia's cartel and the Medellin and the middlemen, and then street gangs in South Central LA that involved the sale of crack cocaine. Webb's article featured Oscar Danilo Blandon, a drug dealer, importer, and informant that stated that crack was being funneled to a new young millionaire named Freeway Ricky Donald Ross. Rick Ross. He supplied the product to the Crips, the Bloods, and beyond. When Ross was caught and went to jail in 1996, the prosecutors obtained the court order to prevent the defense from questioning Blandon about the CIA connections or his CIA connections. All of this raised a huge question about how involved the CIA was with the crack epidemic, which was raging across the nation. You'd think that Gary Webb would have won a Pulitzer Prize, been celebrated for his investigative journalism, but he was torn apart by the big media. The Washington Post, the New York Times, and the LA Times insisted that the Contra cocaine smuggling was minor and that Webb was blowing all of this out of proportion. They made it look as if Webb was picking on the poor little CIA, even though he never directly indicated or indicted the CIA in any of these arrangements and these the actual dealing or arranging the deals. He just stated that they were protecting the Contra dealers, so they were really doing more than what Webb implicated them for. In 2009, a book came out called This Is Our Country on Drugs. One of the things that it details is how the Washington Post had facts available showing that Webb's story was accurate, but they would never utilize all of this because National Security Correspondent Walter Pincus made sure that they were not used. Pincus found out a way to make sure that these stayed on the Washington Post editing room floor. He had been accused of flirting with joining the CIA and routinely accused of being an undercover asset with them in the 1950s. He always says that this is overblown. Never denied it, but he says that it's overblown. 2 years prior to the LA Times profiling of Freeway Ricky Ross as Southern Central's first millionaire crack dealer, but 2 months after Webb's series tied Ross into the Contras, a network, then the Times turned a new spin on the story. So 2 years prior, they were calling him a millionaire drug dealer, but then right after the article, then they changed the game up. After Webb's article, they said that the paper said that Ross was but a interchangeable piece in a puzzle, one of many pieces. Webb was forced out of journalism, and his own colleagues at a larger paper pushed him away from what he does. In 2004, Gary Webb's body was found dead with 2 bullet wounds to his head. The thing is that he was shot twice with an old vintage revolver, which means it has to click back, you got to pull the trigger back and pop it again, which would have meant that he had to cock the hammer back to fire the second shot with the 38 millimeter round. We know for sure that the CIA is involved in drugs. That's indisputable. We even have reasoning behind it. They can obtain more money to operate without having to account to Congress about what they are doing. I just wanted to finish this up today because I do need to actually start getting to the book and start getting to the parts we're supposed to talk to. And a quote today got me motivated. It said, we got to start starving our distractions and start feeding our desires. So time for me to get at it. So I hope you will start joining in with me so that we can have some of these conversations and these discussions so that we can enlighten each other and grow together. So again, JP coming to you. Get at me next time.